Ladies and gentlemen, K Kim here. Welcome to the daily update. Hope you guys had a good day trading today. Market is up 1.5%, right? That's about similar percentage as how much it was up yesterday, about 1.5%. So let's kind of get into it here. You can see this is where the market closed yesterday, right? And we saw slightly gap down, and we talked about slight gap down is not gonna cut it on the last night's video. And so slight gap down, quickly we got it back up. I think at that point, you know, you see that my midterm moving average was declining here. And so that was the first hour, and the first hour we tagged it. We pulled back just a little bit right on that my midterm moving average. And then next hour, pull back a little bit, came down to my long-term moving average now. There's some whipsawing going on, you know, around my long-term moving average, that pink moving average there. And we talked about it yesterday that sometimes, because this being a long-term moving average, it's going to have its up and down whipsawing action potentially. What's important is the direction of where this moving average is going. So we've labeled this market as bullish in the long term because my long-term moving average is rising higher, and we actually gotten above it. Second hour retest a little bit, got back up, and then I think what happened on the second hour also, there was a gap. You see this gap? This gap got filled. That's why briefly, about 2-3 hours, right? When the gap gets filled, it does act as short-term resistance, instant resistance. We did that. We saw that. Price pretty much hung around on the second hour, third hour, and a fourth hour. So all afternoon, price stalled at that 307 level. 307 is, you know, pretty prominent resistance because we know that that was the swing high, and that was a gap area before that Friday flush to the downside, the first hour, and dripping lower all throughout the day on Friday. So we hung around there. I actually kind of thought that, you know, we may kind of end the day in that vicinity. But fifth hour, we got back up. And then last hour, we actually broke out very, very fast. Towards the end of the day, it actually came all the way back up to 310. We pulled back. We actually closed at 308. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting here. Okay, yeah, so we closed at 308.36. So it's a little lower here, but it's not a huge, it's somewhere down here. So we hit that level, we pushed it up all the way to 310 there. And you can see why did we pull back from that. You can see there was there's a lot of resistance there. We got up there very, very fast towards, like, you know, last 30 minutes of trading. But that's the level where we saw that falling resistance. Is no coincidence where we got right to that level, right to the cent. Isn't that crazy how these things work like that? Just right to that level. That's the level where we saw that long term, not long term, but this is actually short term, right? Because we're looking at 65-minute chart. This is actually short term. You know, looking at just several weeks here. So the shorter term downtrend resistance there. I'll call this actually short to midterm, right? Short to midterm downtrend resistance, because we are kind of hanging below that level quite some time here. Like, this is what, early June, so about, you know, 3 weeks there. So short to midterm downtrend resistance we've been tracking here, and that's the level coinciding with what? The gap area, right? There was that gap up, there's a gap down. That pink box represents island gap, island top gap, right? So that was a level that we talked about how it's going to provide resistance here. Yesterday I gave you a scenario that if we'd have seen a gap up today, big gap up above 307, there would have been a good chance where we'll go fill it and then maybe a pullback. But we didn't see a gap up, so bulls had to work extra hard to, you know, think about what they had to do. They not only they had to push it up, they have to fill this gap, right? So we filled that gap, and then in the same day was able to get above that resistance. We have to fill the gap, get above that resistance, and we had that declining, my falling midterm moving average in that vicinity, because it did act as pretty strong resistance here, act as support here, act as resistance here and here. So it did have a pretty impressive resume just looking at last several weeks. We actually thrust above it, and then we actually went up to fill the gap, and then the gap made it stall for 3 hours. And then that was a swing high resistance. We broke above it, and it all happened in one day. So there was a tremendous amount of marching going on throughout the day. And then when we finally broke above 307, important, prominent resistance, pivotal level, this thing started going up very fast. It all happened within 5 minutes. Because I was watching towards the end of the day, all of a sudden price started really skyrocketing very, very fast. And then we hit that downtrend resistance, and then the gap area, and then we fell back. We fall back here, so that's why you see the long upper wick. So I think this move all started with, because on the weekend we talked about potential, because on the weekend video that I did over the weekend on Friday night, next week's scenarios explained, I have laid out different scenarios. This is one of the scenarios that I thought potentially could happen. Also one of those scenarios that I thought it would have a rare chance of happening. But this market has been doing that. Because again, we talked about yesterday that, a lot of people, I think going into the weekend, coming back to Monday morning, expected this market to continue to further lower. And I don't think a lot of people anticipated this. And I actually shared this potential scenario of bullish divergence because I think a lot of people are expecting something like that. And this market's been, performing a lot of surprises, last couple of weeks. And so what happened was Monday morning, first couple hours, instead of seeing, that was a Monday morning? That wasn't a Monday morning, right? Oh, this was when it was formed. This wasn't when it was forming. This was actually on Friday when this was forming. It was because you can see we did see a big downturn on Friday morning, first hour, and I was surprised to see that my oscillator was still. You can see how this oscillator was still moving higher. Do you see that? That move really didn't do much to this oscillator. So that was kind of a tell, the early tell, right? The early signal, big down move on Friday morning, but my oscillator was like, what happened? There was nothing there. There was no commotion there, despite the fact that in the price, we saw a big downturn, And then I think that was kind of the early tell. And then what happened was from that point, we saw on Monday actually gapping up pretty hard. And then it pulled back, filled the gap, and it rallied last 2 days. So we rallied about last 2 days. We rallied from the lows about 3.7% from the lows to the highs last 2 days, right? So pretty fast movement here. And with that, I think first thing I want to mention is that the bears, still not able to fill this gap. So let's be fair with bulls also, right? This gap is not been filled. This time was not filled, right? This time, that was some big down day in one day, right? Still was not able to fill this gap right here and right here. And then bears came down, tried it hard one more time to bring it down. We didn't even get to it. We didn't even come and retest 297 as of now, as of today. So there's about 3 attempts to fill this gap was not successful. And that is going to be more favorable to the buyers because this gap at least would have, I think it would have been better if the bears would have come and filled this gap. Because same thing happened for the buyers, right? There was some big gap up right here. That was some huge gap up and buyers were not able to fill this gap. Buyers were not able to fill this gap. There was another gap up right here. Buyers were not able to fill this gap. There was another gap up right here. Buyers were not able to fill this gap. What happened? Hectic. So now looking at things more about kind of midterm, This gap not filled. Here, bear's attempt didn't get to fill that gap. Another attempt here was not able to fill the gap. And that's going to favor the buyers in the midterm. So there we have this, we see buyers protecting this gap. That means they are still strong looking at things in the midterm. And they proved it in just last 2 days. They proved it. So now, I think at this point, what the bears are trying to do is trying to protect these gaps here. So there's a couple of scenarios I can lay out for you going into tomorrow and rest of this week, Wednesday and Thursday. Buyers need to fill this gap. That's it. Bottom line is buyers need to fill that gap and kill the sell pressure from here. Buyers already know. Buyers are already aware. When bears was not able to fill these gaps right here, you see that gap open, gap open, gap open, right? Bulls were able to brought it up. So now we're right at that juncture, right? We do have strong resistance. We do have bearish island top reversal gap there. Buyers must go up and fill this gap and not fall back down. We fall back down from here. Bears are going to come back down and gonna fill this gap at 297, 295. And with that, bears are going to cultivate yet another lower high here. You see that? That's a high, that's a lower high, that's a lower high, that's a lower high. Unfortunately, for the bears, they don't have a lower lows yet because that's a low, that's the equal low, that's the equal low. So we do have lower highs, but we don't have lower lows. Looking at things short to midterm, right? Short to midterm. The short term, they do have a lower low here, but looking at things in a more overall picture, they don't. So this is a very, very important juncture for both bulls and bears. Important juncture for both bulls and bears. Bears, make sure you protect this level. Protect 309, 3010. Make sure bulls do not fill this gap. If you can do that, you can at least come back down to, bring it back down to 305. I given you 307, 305. And then, there's some moving averages here. But ultimately, because bulls we might potentially see a pullback and then bulls might try again. Or if bulls can just bring it back up and fill this gap, what will it take to gap it above it? 1.1% gap. That's actually doable gap up. So the best case scenario for the buyers at this point, gapping up above 312. We gap up above 312. That will be 1.10% gap up, which is doable. Gap up. You see that happening. Buyers can turn this into a island bottom reversal now, and that kind of jumping, pressure, right? Buying pressure, jumpstart buying pressure. That kind of jumpstart buying pressure, it's gonna get at least 315, and bulls gonna try very hard to come and fill this gap at 318. If we do see a gap up, obviously bears don't want to see that. However, if bulls gap back up though, without gapping up, bulls gonna try to march higher and then trying to fill this gap. It's getting there where bulls do have a little bit of room, so they want to maximize this. Bears were not able to do that here. They had a little bit of room here. Bears were not able to maximize that, utilize that. Bulls did get above, slightly poking his head up. So things can change, I think, early tomorrow morning, right? I mean, we see an abrupt sell-off. This thing can come right back down like that. If we see an abrupt sell-off first 2 hours, this can we could see some whipsawing action there, and the oscillator could come right back down. So bulls need to keep this buying pressure continue and at least get up to the maximum overbought level. So there's some room. So bulls are getting kind of tired, but they're not. They have some energy left. The only question is, are they going to utilize this? Are they going to maximize from this energy they might have a little bit of left? And they already built some momentum here. So if they do go up and just fill that, by the time it goes up and fill that, the oscillator is going to get to the extreme overbought level, and we will see a pullback at that time, because that's going to be that when that gap gets filled, it's going to act as resistance. So that's what I was saying was gapping up above it will be the best case scenario. For the bears, need to get back below 305 because some of these moving average clusters there, and they're going to provide some support if we see a slight pullback to 305. You're going to provide support. So bears has to bring it down pretty hard at this point. Otherwise, any kind of a slow drip lower will find support at 305, 307, and bulls going to try again to fill that gap. So going into tomorrow, we are at this pivotal juncture. You can follow me at 2K Kim, and I've been tweeting that bullish divergence out on my oscillator, my moving average updates and stuff like that throughout the day today. I had more time today, so I was able to tweet more. So you can follow me at 2K Kim on Twitter and Stock Twitch, and I'll tweet things out tomorrow when I see it. So we'll come back, and it will be important because we're right at this juncture where bulls can make some big move if they can bypass this downtrend resistance and that gap reversal area. Bears need to act quickly to kill this momentum as soon as possible. If bears hesitate because bulls built so much momentum already, bulls are going to bring it up. So I'll come back for you tomorrow night, and we will reassess the situation, right? You guys enjoy your evening, and good luck trading tomorrow.